Greetings, system failure listeners. Nate here, Brian over there. Brian, how are you doing on a snowy Sunday morning in December?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. You know, it is snowing out. We're up here, you know, in the unnamed building that we were banned from saying like a year ago.
I mean, you can say the name if you want of our apartment complex. I don't think there's really... The story there is that like a year, maybe 2 years ago, the apartment tower where we live wanted us to omit the name of the apartment tower from our podcasts, but I just feel like there's not really anything they can ask us to, and we can politely not broadcast the name of your apartment tower here, Brian. But I mean, it is true that we can't use your apartment as a storefront, but I think we're allowed to tell people where we live. It's you don't have to keep it a secret where you live. But interesting story there. So we got exciting football action this afternoon, Brian. We may even get a snowy game down at Gillette. I do love it when the snowflakes fly during a good game, during a chilly day out on the gridiron. So I'm excited about that action.
Oh, yeah. Well, it is good to watch the snow from the apartment building, you know, looking down on Congress Street, and we can watch the snowflakes fly at Gillette Stadium in a few hours from now. So yeah, it's pretty exciting, huh? Big
game against the Bills this week. I don't know. I bet $10 on the game to win back $20. So my little betting account will either be at $40 or $60. My DraftKings account, depending on the outcome of this game. So I only like to bet $5 or $10 at a time. I can't imagine. But I can see how people get addicted to these betting platforms. Like if I bet $1,000 one time, I think that I would be hopelessly addicted after that. I mean, can you imagine how wild the Patriots game would be if you'd bet like $1,000? If you bet like your that month's rent money on the game, it would be one hell of a stressful game. You'd be agonizing over the terrible call. You get like a garbage, offensive pass interference call against the Pats. You won't be able to believe it, when you get $1,000 on the game. So that's why I like to keep my bets for $5 on the Bruins and $10 on the Pats. And then, I haven't had to put any money in my gambling account in 9 months, and when I did put money in last spring during the NHL playoffs, I put $20 in, and I took the $20 back out. So no matter what happens, my DraftKings account is all gravy.
With the bold strategy of just betting on Boston teams to win.
Yeah, I like to bet on the $5 on the Red Sox, $5 on the Bruins, $10 on the Patriots, and bet on the money lines. I just like to use $5 or $10 to really multiply my excitement for the game. You see, that's the strategy. I don't want to have to try to win this month's rent or anything like that. That's just horrifying. But I can't. But just by dint of having $5 on the game, it really makes like your Tuesday evening Bruins game much more exciting than it otherwise would be. So I can only imagine what the effect would be if you had a substantial, like an actual amount of money that mattered on the game. It would sure be one hell of a trip.
Well, there is nothing better than having action on the game. See, if you had just started with like $1 million instead of $20, right, you'd be up $9 million instead of like $90.
That's true, but my mind, I'm sure, would have been destroyed. It would be hard to keep it together during such high stakes, sports betting actions as that.
Well, if you want to be strung out, you should bet a lot of money on a sports game, and win or lose, you'll be like out of your mind.
Yes.
Well, Dave Portnoy tweeted that the Patriots being plus 1.5 at home against the Bills here is the biggest insult of his life. So hopefully that bears fruition and the Bills get shellacked.
Yeah. Oh, I have a premonition that the Bills are going to win today, even though I have my $10 in the game. It just feels like a game that the Bills could take. The Bills are not slouches. They're really good. To be fair, they have failed to show up for the big games in the past. But whenever the Bills have... I just think about back to 2001. There was that windy game at Gillette where Coach Belichick dialed up only three pass plays, ran the entire game and managed to beat the Bills. Well, this was the Cam Newton edition of the Patriots. And but then they came into Gillette and just rolled the Pats, at the second game of the season and then again in the postseason. And so it was like, we had our last at the Bills' expense in the 21 season, but they ultimately got the last laugh. But on the other hand, but I do think that like a loss, you don't want to just win every game going into the playoffs. You want some adversity pre-playoffs. So I'm not sure a loss is a disaster. It's not good for my DraftKings betting account. But I feel like a loss might be okay for it might be the Pats. They just need to face a little adversity here as the season winds down, so they don't just sail into the postseason without having faced any adversity. So I don't know. I have a sinking feeling, but I'm gonna be rooting for the Pats to win, nonetheless.
Well, you're putting the reverse whammy on the Bills here, so I like that.
All right. Hopefully that's true. I mean, I would love it. It was just a blowout against the Bills today. But man, they're a good team. I mean, that Josh Allen is, he's got to be. Is he the top QB in the league? He's the top 3, and we'll see. But I did already mention it. The Bills always blow big games, so this isn't necessarily a big game maybe for them. But they never do. They never seem to show up for the postseason games that really matter. So I don't know what to make of the Bills overall. The constituency of their character. I guess we're about to find out in a couple hours.
Well, I'm sure it'll come right down to it one way or another.
Well, all levity aside, we did have a shooting last night. Last night for us, but today over in Australia. You must have seen this, Brian?
I did not.
Over in Bondi Beach, there was some Hanukkah thing going on, and multiple gunmen opened up fire on these poor people trying to celebrate their holiday and killed 11. I guess this is like I say, a multiple shooting situation. So
we killed 11?
11 people. Yeah, that's what
killed 11 people.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So there's like 2 shooters and then 11 casualties and a bunch of injuries. Yeah, I mean that is just a grisly incident. First of all, didn't the Aussies have some kind of a mass shooting in the 90s, and then they confiscated everybody's guns, and then the comments I've seen online suggest that the Aussies feel superior to their American counterparts because they got rid of all their guns and don't have this mass shooting problem. But I don't know. They had that Christchurch massacre, about 5 or 6 years ago. Dude just went into a mosque and started gunning people down and live streamed the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a chance to watch that stream. Some of the more disturbing footage I've seen in my long and storied internet career. But so it does seem like banning all the guns doesn't really seem to help with mass shootings. I don't know. But be that as it may, you hate to hear about these kind of incidents. There's obviously the level of like vitriol towards Jewish people, anti-Semitism is seems to be much higher than it was. I think there's a bunch of reasons for that. There's your good old-fashioned people that just dislike Jewish people for whatever reason. That just is their persuasion. And then you've got like the copycat people. Then you've got like the fact that the Israelis have been committing like an ongoing genocide and have done it whilst wrapping themselves in the whilst emphasizing that they represent Judaism, that they are that their ethno-state, is they've done everything they can to blur the line between the Israeli government and the Jewish faith, and meanwhile the Israeli government is carrying out these horrific acts that we can all see in 4K on all of our cell phones, and you're like, well, I can't help but think that a spike in anti-Semitism, might have a little something to do with the fact that this government is doing a genocide. Well, claiming Judaism, that's not a good look. That's going to definitely, put a bad light on the good name of the Jewish faith. And then there's like the copycat aspect, where like the whole set of beliefs that govern our society since World War II is coming crashing down before all of our eyes. And so there's like that you can get high profile people on the news to clutch their pearls if you scratch a swastika into the swing set of your local high school playground. So people do it for that reason, just because it gets a reaction, because it's like it's a sacred cow that you can just you can get a reaction, just by, but obviously what we're seeing, if you at the point where you actually get a weapon and start shooting at people, you're not really trying to get a reaction. You're trying to actually do some damage. And then there's a fourth option where like terrorist attacks are so often staged for public consumption. Like the Reichstag fire. There's so often some level of stagecraft to these things. You wonder if there's some nefarious element that wants to create acts of terrorism that can be blamed on anti-Semitism. So then it gets the poorest to fight each other, right? It causes a distraction from the distribution of wealth that the powers that be would like us to not be talking about. So I don't know. There's so many layers to this crazy story. All I can do is shake my head and go, ugh, what a mess.
Well, on the subject of whether guns should be legal, I mean, if if our reptilian overlords weren't so brazenly at war against the peasantry, I'd feel better about like illegalizing guns.
Yeah. You're saying if there was no class war, you could maybe see where guns are limited in use in their scope and usefulness.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're just like at war with. I mean, that's been the case since 9/11, I guess is what I would say.
Well, I'm sure the class war is the great theme of all of history, but definitely definitely the story of post 9/11 America. No question about that, right? We had before, in the 80s and the 90s and the 70s, you could get a factory job and buy a house with it, right? But post 9/11, but in the 2000s and with the great financial collapse in the 2010s and now the 2020s, right? All that is out the window.
Well, it's just, I mean, I don't know. I guess I wonder what it would be like to not think this way, but it's just so like brazenly apparent. The worst thing was Hillary's campaign slogan. That "I'm with her" slogan has to be the most like embarrassing campaign slogan of all time. She could have at least said she was with us, but that's not the case, huh?
That's a great point. I never thought about that, but yeah, obviously in a democracy, the idea is that your political representative would be like coming to you, right? Versus you have to swear loyalty to them. That's a great point. I never thought about the layers of cringe really involved with that campaign slogan. I'm with her.
Oh, yeah. And it's just, I don't know. It's just really obvious that our political overlords, like, or at least at the high levels, aren't, like, trying to help us there. Well, the tail wags the dog. I mean, I don't know. It's a common trope, I guess. And then, like, on Australia, yeah, they've got the guns banned there. So, I mean, you could ban guns, and I guess there probably would be less gun deaths. Like Candace Owens is banned from Australia, I guess.
Really? That's interesting. I didn't know that about her.
The things that she said. And so just speaking of like whether assassinations are planned, right? And so there's a huge feud now like Candace Owens is causing as to whether this Charlie Kirk business is a planned assassination, right? And so you've got like Nick Fuentes on one side and like Tim Pool. And then on the other side, I don't know. Well, Jimmy Dore was just talking to Candace Owens again. And, like, he had her on. And, Jimmy Dore is, like, a pretty reasonable... He's, like, a bleeding heart liberal.
But he tackles class issues, right? Jimmy Dore does. So Jimmy Dore, he's one of these stand-up guys, but he's got an internet show, right, called The Jimmy Dore Show.
Right.
And it's, like, his stated pretense or his is to replace the Bill Maher. He wants to like replace the Real Time with Bill Maher on HBO that comes out every Friday. Because he actually and I would wish that would happen because this man actually brings a class analysis to the news. It's something you will not be seeing on the mainstream inner tubes like HBO.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I guess by bleeding heart liberal, I mean that he's not like a shit lib, right?
Yes, yeah.
Which is like what Hillary Clinton is, and that woman from CNN,
Donna Brazile, the woman who worked for the Hillary campaign and later became. Is that who we're talking about?
No, it's that lesbian who Rachel Maddow. Oh, right. That's what I'm trying to think of.
Yes. Yeah. There's a certain version of the leftist which totally steers clear of any kind of class analysis whatsoever. There's no talk of maldistribution of wealth. Instead, it's like a version of leftism where you can be in support of the neoliberal project of dropping taxes on the ruling classes and hoping for some trickle-down benefits maybe for the rest of us.
Well, the oft-mentioned Dave Smith, he's a fan of Jimmy Dore. I mean, I don't think he agrees with his politics,
certainly
but he does
not,
agree with his ability, his powers of inquiry.
Yeah.
And so anyway, just on the topic of whether, these things are planned or not, these assassinations are gunning down of people. Yep.
It's interesting that Jimmy Dore has old Candace Owens on his show. It's pretty wild. It is like there is look. It's like I don't have to agree in order to find people's analysis useful. I don't have to agree with them really at all. I just need them to not be actively ignoring the class war. Right? I get like Dave Smith, the libertarian, like right-leaning conservative guy. Love listening to this man speak. Even though I agree with him about nothing, the fact that he's honest about he's not trying to obscure a class war, well, that's just like that just means that his analysis is incredibly useful. Meanwhile, you've got your Bill Mahers and your Sam Harrises who live in expensive houses, never had to punch a time card for a living, and just have no. It's not that they're actively trying to conceal the class war, but they just have no concept of it because they lead insulated lives, making their analysis not so useful for regular Joes like you and me.
Definitely.
Just one last thing here on this subject of guns. I just pulled up Karl Marx's famous quote about guns. You've heard this one, I'm sure, before, Brian, but his quote is, "Under no pretext should arms and ammunition be surrendered. Any attempt to disarm the workers must be frustrated by force if necessary." So that's our man Karl Marx on the subject of gun control.
Yeah. Well, I guess he also is able to identify that the bourgeoisie is out to get us.
Yeah. It's a good advertisement of horseshoe theory. This idea that as you get out to the extremes of the political left and right, they're not really extremes at all, and they actually agree on almost everything. And really, there's a polarity between the centrist establishment and the political extremes is the same polarity. The idea that this idea that the extreme right and the extreme left, when you get out to the fringes, meet. That's really what the Karl Marx quote illustrates. You've got your hardcore conservatives who are all about preserving the Second Amendment on the right, and then on the left you got Karl Marx being like, well, no, whoa, yeah, we do not want to give a monopoly. We don't want to cede a monopoly on violence to the bourgeoisie. That's not a good look. So it's very interesting.
Well, a whole part of the American way is to just have like two centrist political parties and avoid the fringes of the right and left, coalescing to challenge the establishment narrative. And like in European countries, they like vote for parties rather than people. Yeah,
rather than like personalities. Yeah.
And somehow they've got it so that there's always the fringe or extreme parties are always like on the ticket somehow.
Yeah, they have these like parliamentary systems where even the folks who come in, the parties who come in third and fourth and fifth get some representation also. Obviously, this is a huge generalization. Each of these countries runs their government a little bit differently, but the point is that they're not locked into a two-party duopoly. That communist and socialist parties actually have. They're not like crazy extremists. They're actually part of the seated governments in all these European countries. They don't have the immune response towards socialist or communist parties. I think France has multiple communist parties, right? For example, so it's just like, we really could use. It's not that we want everyone to be a communist, but it would just be nice to have that worldview mixed into the discourse, just for the sake of variety, if nothing else.
Yeah. I just don't know if people realize that the American two-party system is a bit of an anomaly.
Yeah.
And then there's just the obvious way in which it reinforces like centrist, politics, which are really like, bourgeoisie politics.
Yeah. Defending the status quo where a tiny minority have all the wealth and the rest of us scramble for the scraps. That's the status quo that they'd like to preserve at all costs if they possibly could, eh?
Yes.
Well, I guess speaking of the plight of the working class, big financial news this week is that the Federal Reserve Open Market Committee met on Wednesday and released their intention to lower the benchmark interest rates by yet another quarter point, despite the fact that everyone's groceries are going up in prices. And there's an inflation that is squeezing the middle class and causing affordability. Finally, affordability is like the central issue, is becoming a central issue in politics where maybe it wasn't before. I did see where the Donald is trying to the headline here on Saturday in the Wall Street Journal is Trump isn't their exclusive. Trump isn't certain his economic policies will translate to midterm wins. Right, so the Trump White House is aware that they're not going to be winning any further elections without addressing the affordability issue. And it's funny that Republicans, they have to figure out some way to get around the fact that the Obamacare COVID era subsidies are disappearing and no one can afford their health insurance anymore because the costs are absolutely eye-watering, and they don't really have a plan, right? Because the Republicans are like free market people. "Quote unquote free market people," and it's just like, the free market has just ruined it's like we just said, they're trying to preserve a status quo where the insurance companies are making out with 50 cents of every healthcare dollar, and the working class desperately needs that situation ameliorated. But that won't be good for profits on Wall Street. So, our ruling capitalist parties are between a rock and a hard place on that front. So it's good to see affordability becoming like an issue in politics. But it is interesting to note that the idea at the Federal Reserve is that you're trying to balance pricing, like inflation, and then like full employment. And so they're worried the economy is not doing so well, and that they need to goose economic activity with lower interest rates. But of course, lower interest rates creates more economic activity, creates inflation. So it seems like the Fed, while they're warning this might be their last interest rate cut for a while, it does seem like they are just going to hold their nose and continue dealing with the inflation. And by they, I mean we, the working class, is going to have to hold our nose and continue to deal with inflation. Well, they continue to cut interest rates.
Well, the Republicans need to make it like patriotic to be poor.
Maybe that's the solution.
Which I guess is kind of going on with country music. Maybe I don't. Although I don't think people in trailer parks want to be poor either. That's what it comes down to. It's quite there's a visceral urge to make something of yourself.
Yes. And, it's the worst being limited. It's like being poor is the opposite of being free. It's like being trapped in a prison. It's the worst. The worst.
The repeal of these, healthcare subsidies, like the Obamacare subsidies, that's like a major disaster for the Republican Party.
Yes.
I can't believe the plan is just to have people's healthcare costs spike enormously.
Yeah, just have it become like $17,000 or something like that. Just way more than anyone. The Obamacare. I'm hearing from people that use Obamacare and what they're like on the internet or in the news broadcast, like Sagar Enchetti of Breaking Points, the man with a young daughter who was just born this past year, and he shared his Obamacare numbers, and his annual out of pocket's going to be like $17,000 or something like that. It's just absolutely absurd. Like the only reason Obamacare has made it this far is because the government heavily subsidizes it, which means they cut huge checks to these insurance companies.
It'd be crazy to live in some kind of post-class society, right, where it's just not the same silly ongoing struggle like all the time, right?
It would sure be a relief. Yeah. Yes.
And it's like this ongoing struggle that they're trying to like distract you from, it's obvious that it's the case, but they try to tell you that it's not the case, right? It's that hyper-normalization, right? And just like all the news is fake. It would just be crazy to live in some society where, there's like some... Yeah, there's just not a crazy fugazi going on, right?
There's not some huge elephant in the room that everyone's trying to tiptoe around. Well, all of the people in authority are trying to tiptoe around this huge elephant in the room. And the working class is like, hey, man, can we deal with the elephant? Please, we really need to talk about the elephant. And they just don't want to do it.
I sure burn a lot of calories like trying to negotiate these tip lines on these kiosks, on these iPads or whatever, and eating, like a lot of rice and vegetables and tofu, so as to try to, not go to debtor's prison.
Well, speaking of the plight of the working class, when Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, came out to announce the quarter-point drop on Wednesday, he cited this idea that he believes that the past couple employment reports may be jobs reports, that is to say, may be overstated by some 60,000 jobs. So, past couple of jobs reports have indicated a net increase of about 20,000 jobs per, and then so he's saying that we think this is overcounted by 60,000. So instead of 20,000 jobs added to the economy over the past couple of months, we've lost up to 40,000 over the past, couple of jobs reports. This, according to Powell. I mean, that certainly is a sinister. It's not a good look. That means it's really. I mean, if the idea that we're hemorrhaging jobs here and that economic activity is slowing was cited as his reason for supporting the interest rate drop and trying to goose the economy with some cheaper debt.
I can't imagine like what jobs we're adding to the economy. What kind of do these count like restaurant jobs? Because they opened up a new like Indian place on Congress Street. Does that go into this jobs report?
Yeah, I think that the term that's supposedly in these jobs reports is non-farm payroll. So I think it includes full-time workers and part-time workers who are not looking for work. I think that's right. And don't work on a farm. I don't know. We'd have to go on the Bureau of Labor Statistics website and look it up. But yeah, it seems like it's ominous if the top line jobs numbers are indeed fraudulent. It's not a good look.
I guess the only thing I can think of that's like added jobs instead of taking them away is the weed industry. Since the legalization of weed, there's tons of these cannabis stores everywhere. But
Business is booming, huh?
Besides that, I feel like I've only seen businesses close. I guess, when they added that casino in Oxford, there's like restaurants now in Norway or, around Oxford, Maine here where they opened that casino. So there's that, but besides those two things, everything's been like deleterious. A lot of like jobs being taken away and businesses closing.
Yeah,
and Main Street's crumbling.
Seems like the AI sector is where is the basket in which all of our economic eggs are currently based or currently placed. Right, it's like that's where that part of the economy is going like gangbusters, but I've heard many commentators say if you remove the AI sector, the AI companies from like the S&P, we'd be in like recession territory. It would be all kinds of losses.
Well, maybe what we should do is just legalize more drugs, and then we can all make money like selling drugs to each other and betting on sports games. Well,
that does seem like the dystopian future to which we are careening at this very moment, Brian.
Well, there's just so many weed shops, right? So if they legalize like the cocaine or something, right, you could have just as many cocaine shops on every street corner, and I don't know, we'd have a bustling economy, right?
I guess you're right. Illicit drug. I mean, it does. There's illicit drugs are definitely a sector which, if you legalize them, would promise much economic growth.
Oh yeah. Well, apparently it's the only thing that sells these days.
Well, just one more piece of news to help paint the portrait of our economy and where it's at. I did see here that bankruptcies, commercial bankruptcies, like businesses, have surpassed 2008 levels. So that's interesting here. The headline is U.S. bankruptcy skyrocket to highest level since 2008 meltdown. So that's pretty wild.
Well, that goes back to what we were saying about all the businesses closing, and I just don't know where these jobs would be coming from, right?
Yeah, yes. Other than the AI sector, and like you're right, maybe gambling and marijuana. Those are the only sources of growth for our economy in the near future, the near term.
Oh yeah, it's a wild time to be alive.
Well, Brian, I suggest to you that we take a short break, and then when we come back, we've got to talk about some shocking podcasts that came out this past week. Mr. Nick Fuentes on Piers Morgan, and then the Milo Yiannopoulos, a man who I've not heard from in like 7 or 8 years, popped up on Tucker Carlson, and man, it sure did. Well, it was pretty wild. We'll get into it after the break.
All right.
And we're back. All right. Well, the podcasts were electric this week, Brian, with some truly shocking content coming to us from Piers Morgan and from Tucker Carlson. Shall we talk first about our man Milo Yiannopoulos, who was last seen maybe in 2017 or 18 as a provocateur and a advocate for gay rights, right? The man was like, he behaved in a very like flaming fashion. Like he really, there's like I've known a bunch of gay people in my time. Some gay folks you would never know. You just have to kind of learn that about them. But other people have a persona that suggests it. I think that's like a dating strategy. If you chance to be homosexual, well, then that's going to be like 5-10% of the population, and so you kind of have to. Some folks make it their strategy to broadcast the fact that they're gay. To maybe, I'm guessing that helps you, possibly finding potential partners. It can't be easy when you're wanting to date someone of the same sex, right? It's got to be. Most people aren't going to feel that way, so there's got to be some vetting process, and I just feel like sometimes the affect is part of the vetting process. And whether I'm right or wrong about that, the point is that Milo Yiannopoulos used to really lean into this like really like gay persona.
Well, he was like gay but conservative. It was a wild twist on the norm.
Yeah, he's a provocateur, right? So he's trying to think of the thing that's going to get attention and clicks and likes and or thumbs down and negative, just the thing that's going to create a reaction of magnitude. And so that's why I like squint my eyes and with suspicion in his direction. It's like, Milo Yiannopoulos, man, I do feel like he'll just say whatever the thing is that will get a reaction. So I don't know how seriously we should take his testimonies, but be that as it may, the point is he was on Tucker Carlson now recanting and renouncing the gay lifestyle, talking about its many liabilities, and suggesting that like things like making gay conversion therapy illegal is like the way he framed it was like it's like making it illegal to be an apostate, to go back against, to decide you want to reform and not be gay anymore. Well, we got to make that illegal. It's an interesting way of framing things. So I don't know. The man had a lot of wild stuff like that he had to say. I wonder what you thought of it, Brian.
Well, the opening question, like of I guess maybe the hypothesis or the question Tucker Carlson's trying to answer is like, why are people gay? Mm-hmm. And I guess what Milo says is that, well, you're not just born that way, and that, things may cause you to be that way. Like, an absent father, overbearing mother, being molested or something at a young age might do it to you. Which, I guess that part of it isn't super controversial. Like, I don't know if, like, everyone... Well, I mean, probably not. I don't know. Like, I'm sure that it's possible to be gay without being, like, molested and having a perfectly fine relationship with your parents. But there probably is true that a lot of people who are gay do fall under that umbrella. And... I don't know. Is it wrong? Like, so like I'm attracted to like smoking the weed, right? I would love to rip a massive bong load, listen to Dark Side of the Moon, watch some football or hockey, do it on the regular. But it doesn't necessarily mean I should. And so I feel like what Milo was saying is that I don't know. I guess for him, he feels the same way about his homosexual attraction. That it's something that he'd like to do, but feels like he shouldn't. And the reason why not is that he feels like, I guess it's against God is what he's decided. And so I don't really know if like, acts of buggery are like an affront to God. But to some extent, I don't know, like how monogamous are like homosexual marriages? He says like not very. And so I don't know, is that like is that like a bad thing to have like if it's true that like most homosexual marriages are like not monogamous, is that bad? Are people not like actually happy in this situation? I guess I'm not really in a position to judge.
Well, among the gay couples I know, not a lot of monogamy going on. That part rang true for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably, you could say the same thing about, not homosexual marriages, too.
I would say that the folks I know who are gay married or have been gay married, it is not like... it's not like a man who did who went and did a spot whoring when he was on a business trip in Seattle. It is not a non-monogamous homosexual marriage and a non-monogamous heterosexual marriage seem like two very different beasts in my very limited anecdotal experience.
Well, ultimately, I think that I don't think gay conversion therapy should be like illegal, and if that's something you want to do. I mean, I think you should follow your heart on the matter. I mean, who's to say, like, who's to be the arbiter of what God's will is or what have you? But, I mean, it sounds like Milo's relationship with buggery is similar to my relationship with weed, where it isn't really working for me.
Yeah.
So
an unwholesome attraction, huh?
Yeah. And, I mean, especially... Man, I don't know. Like, if you were like molested as a kid or something, and like that's I don't really know what that means. Like I mean I know what it means, but like I like be molested and have it change your sexuality. Like what is like what? How does that like carry itself out? And like, are you having like loving and fulfilling relationships, like homosexual relationships? It's possible, or is it something that like it's more like this kink that provides us some kind of flood of dopamine, and I don't know. It's just people are like flowers or trees, right? And so if your tree is growing and there's some kind of thing in the way, it's gonna grow around it and get some kind of crazy shape to it. And what might be best for that tree is to remove the obstacle and let the tree straighten out, so to speak. And so I don't know. It'd be one thing to see your sexuality gets like caught up in like a crazy things of your childhood development, right?
Well, yeah, that's when it develops. Yeah.
And now you've got like a crazy fetish for like licking, I don't know, feet or something.
Yeah, like inflation, fetishes, where things just get bigger in size. And some people love that. Yeah, I don't know,
inflation
man.
fetishes.
Yeah, people love like stomping, like a nice shapely female foot in a stiletto stomping on grapes or what have you. People love that.
Ugh.
I don't know, man. The things the wires that can get crossed in your development. Well, there's just a lot of them, and they can definitely get crossed. And then you end up with one of these great sexual fetishes. I mean, if I had a stomping or an inflation fetish, that would be like money in the bank, man. You would have it would be like you would. It's like if you don't have any of those fun kinks, then you don't get to play in the sandbox.
Sure.
Well, look, I think we can say I think it's pretty uncontroversial to suggest that amongst abuse victims, the incidence of homosexuality is higher than in the general population. I don't think that that's remotely controversial. Like, I think it is definitely true that abusive patterns of behavior, well, they're cyclical, right? The abusive patterns of behavior beget more abusive patterns of behavior. And so I think I don't think it's remotely controversial to suggest that that if the altar boy that gets molested by the priest may grow up to become, has a much higher chance of growing up to become themselves a predator than someone who did not have that experience. This is where the legends of like the werewolves and the vampires come from, that with these evil contagions, you are doomed to become like that which made you, sort of thing. And if that's the case, is it furthermore possible that the incidence of homosexuality would be higher in a generation of people, or a generation of young men who grew up without fathers, of a generation of the products of divorced and broken families? Is it possible? I don't know. I guess it's interesting because to me it feels like we are questioning the tenets of a faith here, like a religion, and that asking these taboo questions is not something we're like allowed to do. And that's what I really enjoyed about this Milo Yiannopoulos interview. I don't know if I trust the man or fully agree with everything that he said, but the podcast kind of forced me to consider some of these shocking heresies. Like maybe there's a reason why maybe we as a society are doing things to not just promote, but to create to create homosexuality in our population. And I do think the fact that something like gay conversion therapy is illegal, the fact that it's illegal, is very interesting. It makes it seem like we are being sold some kind of a bill of goods here versus versus a attitude where, we can simultaneously respect people who chance to be homosexual, but those who wish to try conversion therapy, well, that's a transaction between consenting adults, and we can't, outlaw it. I wonder why that's not the attitude. It's very interesting.
Well, is gay conversion therapy like illegal?
There's been. I definitely remember hearing of multiple legislative attempts to do away with conversion therapy. I remember hearing that in like the 2010s. I remember it being a contentious issue. And Milo makes a great point there. Why should that be contentious? Unless you're sending someone who is off to a gay conversion camp against their will, well, now we have a problem. Now we have a problem of like consent. But as long as it's consenting adults, it is odd that such a thing would be illegal. I just wonder. Well, there's a whole thing where over and over again in history, you find like moneyed interests trying to intervene in the public discourse, and usually it's to make those moneyed interests even wealthier. A good example, the early, like the suffragette movement in the early 20th century. You had the Freedom Torches, right? I think it was Edward Bernays, like the godfather of public relations, who used cigarettes in the suffragettes in the cigarette ad campaigns, encouraging women to smoke. Up until that time, smoking was really like considered a male habit, but he called them freedom torches, right? And like suggested that the suffragette movement could strike back against the patriarchy by violating the taboo where women weren't supposed to smoke and start smoking themselves, right? So they get like a whole generation of women hooked on cigarettes. Or like the banking scam of the Murphy Brown second wave feminism, right? There's a version. There's like there's a financial incentive to get 2 incomes on every mortgage application and blow up the cost of housing, make the mortgages much more lucrative than they otherwise would be. And so it is like, it does feel like we had more of a natural push to legalize gay marriage in like the 2000s. And I remember being really excited about that, but it does seem like that, in much in the same way that second wave feminism was copied and pasted from the civil rights movement of 5 years before, right? It does feel like the gay rights movement kind of arose, like civil rights and the gay rights movements kind of arose naturally, but then were copied and pasted by moneyed interests as a way to tamp down or subdue, class discussion amongst the poors like you and me. So what you get is Occupy Wall Street explodes in 2010 after the injustice of the 2008 financial crisis, and you get these people, protesting down in Zuccotti Park. And what was the way, and how did we pivot away from that? Well, we had a big push for like the transgender sort of, whatever the woke thing was of the 2010s, right? It switched public discourse away from screaming at the banks for blowing us all up with fraud and getting bailed out to arguing with each other about what is a woman, right? That was the transition that happened. So yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to figure out what percentage of this is like some kind of a psyop and what percentage of this is the natural evolution of society. And Milo's interview really shined a spotlight on that.
Well, I remember, I think it must have been 2020, I know I was arguing with someone online about the mayors of Tulsi Gabbard, and this other person was saying how we needed to vote for some like establishment shill. And one of Tulsi's like crimes against humanity was, I guess, she's part of some branch of Catholicism or something out in Hawaii. I can't remember what it is exactly. But anyway, her religion like supports gay conversion therapy. And that was like one of her crimes. And I was like, well, I mean, if you like want to go to gay conversion therapy, then I really don't see why that's like a strike against your morality. But on the other hand, I can imagine like some broken home, maybe some overbearing or absent father or something, and so their kids going into like high school and is engaged into a spot of buggery, and so the parents send them off to some kind of like Catholic, conversion therapy camp, and where they're going to try to pray the gay away, and the kid like ends up offing himself or something. That's certainly an easy situation to imagine. And so, let's see. I'm trying to imagine how shocked our homosexual listeners might be hearing our podcast. And to them, I say, I don't know, man. You do you. I don't know.
Well, to any folks who chance to be homosexual out there listening with the sound of our voice, maybe we can make it up to you by opening a gay reversion clinic. We can, if you have gay. You could have like a conversion away from gay. We could have a clinic where you convert you back to being gay. We could program people, or
maybe if you're just straight and are interested in buggery, they could teach you like how.
Maybe your life needs a little spice, added to it. You could go to the gay reversion clinic and get brainwashed.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, everyone should listen to Milo's interview, eh? I mean, it's it sure is. It sure was like stepping through the looking glass, listening to this man who had once been a proud advocate for gay rights, now talking about how he's converted to Catholicism and now feels that buggery is a sin before God, to be avoided.
And I guess to use, like to go back to the weed metaphor, I'm certainly smoking the weed seems to work perfectly fine for some people, and others less so. And I guess the truth is about all manner of intoxicants. People have different relationships to them, and so. It's different strokes for different folks, you know?
It's a solid point. I mean, I think probably for some people, being gay is just what the doctor ordered, but then I'm sure for other people, it's not going to be good for them. It's going to end up with some kind of a weird, cyclical, addictive consumption pattern that's never good for anyone.
Yeah, so I don't think Milo's line of inquiry is one that should be, like, foreboding, I guess would be my final opinion on the matter.
Well, shall we pivot from one shocking podcast event to another?
Sure.
So Nick Fuentes, the 28-year-old racist, was on Piers Morgan, and it sure was an interesting interview. What did you think of it, Brian?
Let's see. Well, I guess Piers Morgan's stated mission in in his interview was there's this idea that there's Nick Fuentes, on podcasts where he has one persona, And then there's Nick Fuentes on his own podcast where, well, he's like measured on these other podcasts, and then on his own podcast, he's like he says like racist things and whatnot. And I think for the most part, Nick Fuentes went on Piers Morgan and kind of dispelled that notion. I mean, there is going to be, you're talking to different audiences, so you speak in different ways. But there is also like the Moat and Bailey nature of arguing. When you're amongst your home crowd, well, you're out in the fields, that's the Bailey, right? And then you retreat to the Moat, which is like a tower of defense. And you kind of embrace different arguments. And if you've ever engaged on online political arguments, this kind of thing is really easy to see in action.
So you've got two concentric castle walls, right? A smaller one with a keep inside, then you've got a larger castle wall, and the idea here is that your smaller concentric ring, right, is a very easily defensible, very reasonable position, and you can always fall back on that, but then you've got this much more provocative, much less easily defensible position that you can sally forth and provoke people with, but then when you get challenged, you can, retreat to your Mott, to your Bailey, and that's the idea here that you're articulating.
Yeah, and so, I mean, my takeaways from the podcast were, well, it's just funny because we were, we talked about the rumblings of Nick Fuentes on this very podcast. I don't know, for the past few months, he's just been coming up. I had not heard of Nick Fuentes at all, and then I started to hear about Nick Fuentes. And, he certainly says some shocking things. And I think to some extent, he is being provocative. But on the other hand, I mean, there's also just like what his actual, opinions on things are. And there seems to be this idea that he doesn't really believe anything and he's just trying to be shocking. That's what Milo was saying on Piers Morgan's in like a follow-up episode separate from the one we were talking about before. And I guess I don't really agree. I mean, I think that Nick Fuentes' underlying opinion, or at least his important one anyway, the part of Nick Fuentes that I agree with, is that everything's going to shit, right? Our society has been, obviously, I don't think it's a very controversial opinion. I don't know. I mean,
things certainly seem like they're worse in 2025 than they were, say, 2015, and worse in 15 than they were in 05, so I kind of have to agree with you there.
Yeah, and the thing is we have like a secular religion, well, with its with its blasphemies and sacred cows, and that religion is part of why everything's going to shit, because we have to believe in this thing. And so, and a big part of that religion is the idea of the United States as saviors in World War II and the Holocaust and Israel all fit into this thing, because we are spending our valuable dollars that could be spent on bridges and shelters for the homeless,
universities, things like this.
Yeah, we send that money to Israel so they can have universal health care and blow up Palestinians.
Yeah.
So, and not have universal health care here. Right. And in fact, have unaffordable health care.
Yeah. Just have the insurance companies just predating on the society. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So, I mean, that part I agree with. Or at least, that part, it seems manifestly true. I don't know what there is to debate.
Fuentes had this devastating point that, Piers Morgan labels him as a racist. Fuentes is merely advocating that the United States adopt the same stance as the Israelis with respect to trying to establish an ethno-state. Fuentes makes no bones about the fact that he'd like to see an ethno-state here in the United States, and he says that the Israelis are on the right track trying to create an ethno-state over there in, on the Mediterranean. That's a pretty devastating point, because our establishment supports Israel unconditionally, and their unconditional support for Israel while they conduct this genocide has destroyed the mythology to which you referred moments ago. The secular religion with its heresies and its sacred cows.
I just have to say that Barry Weiss was just saying that Tucker Carlson is un-American for challenging our relationship to Israel, which is just really funny.
Yeah. Which side of Barry Weiss's toast is buttered? You just that is just such a bizarre take.
Yeah, and I think it's not true that American ethno-nationalism doesn't mean white people only. It just means that we just can't we can't like have immigration be like out of control and like replacing, I don't know, like the culture that's already here. Like it needs time to like assimilate and whatnot. And I don't know. I don't really know who supports like unlimited immigration. I'm like unclear if that's a thing exactly. Like I don't know if it's a situation like in California. I mean, obviously there's a lot of Mexicans who aren't there illegally, and so is the opinion there that, I don't know, immigration should just be, is it like because sometimes like opinions from like Los Angeles kind of take over the country because Hollywood, controls the media.
Yeah, media propagates from there.
Yeah. And so I just don't really know. I don't know like why it's a controversial idea exactly, or where it comes in, other than I guess it sounds racist or something. But it seems pretty obvious that we should have control over the borders. I guess people don't like these ICE raids going into like restaurants and getting ousting the workers there. And I mean I guess that's understandable. I guess if I had my way, I don't know. Yeah, rather than trying to like round up all the illegals, I would just stop immigration until like our homeless situation's under control, right?
Yeah. Yes. Well, I think that unchecked immigration is great for business owners, great for the folks that have great for folks that own property for a living. Not so great if you work for a living though, because you're increasing the number of people competing for the same jobs in the economy, while not actually increasing the number of jobs at all. So it drives down wages, right? The demand, when you increase the supply of workers without increasing the demand for workers, we were going to cause prices to go down, wages to go down. And so to me, it seems like there's an obvious incentive for the property owning class to want wave after wave of immigrant. The more desperate the working class is for a job, the less you have to pay them, to get them to work. And so I do think that there is a clear and direct incentive on the part of the property class to welcome unchecked waves of immigration. And you can tell by the way that we enforce our, the way that ICE work. Right? It's not like we're punishing businesses who hire illegals, right? What you could do is just hammer business with fines if they don't properly, vet potential employees for their citizenship papers, right? You could just hammer them with fines, but that's not what we do. We just drag people off the streets, right? Because we're not here to punish business. Our government is our government is run by these businesses, and so but you can just tell by the way that we're enforcing immigration laws that this is all about that the class war figures into this as well, and so I think that this idea that it's racist to want any kind of control over immigration is another one of these clever ideas incepted into the mind of the working class by the propertied class, the property owners. And it's part of this sacred secular religion that is in a state of failure and collapse, right? The extreme anti-racism is a part of that religion. It's being deployed here as a way to make businesses more profitable, right? That's always the bottom line. And so it's interesting to me, it seems like Fuentes has pushed into the Overton window, right? The window of range of acceptable topics of conversation. The idea that Fuentes calls himself a racist, but the idea that you could criticize unchecked immigration from a xenophilic position, right? I love other cultures, but we got to be real. There's just some nuts and bolts reasons why we can't just have an infinite number of people moving into a society. And then the other one is criticism of Israel, which before was quite, like you said earlier, verboten, is now pushed into. Nick Fuentes has played a pivotal role in delivering that into mainstream discourse, whereas before it was off the table of acceptable discourse. So that is really interesting to see that the whole that was really the crux of the interview. Like Piers Morgan would be clutching his pearls and be like, "You're just going to say you're a racist? This is terrible, but so many people died in the Holocaust." And Fuentes is just like, "Yeah, we're over it, man. We've heard it 1,000 times. Like, why is the Holocaust, that particular genocide, elevated to such a holy status in our society, whereas other genocides like the Armenian genocide or the American genocide of American Indians, is just kind of swept under the rug, right? There's been so many genocides in history. Why does this one particular genocide? Why is it always front and center, mounted on our altar for worship when it's just so many other options out there?" So yeah, that sure was shocking to hear Piers Morgan be like, "Well, it's terrible that you're a racist," and to hear Nick just be like, "We are past that point. We don't care anymore." Using ists or isms to label people so you don't have to listen to their opinions may have worked well when the secular religion was respected, but now that secular religion, it's people are no longer believing in it like they once did. It's like when the gears of the economy are turning smoothly and things are working functionally, no one really questions the prevailing dogmas. It's when things start breaking down and are obviously working less well that people start taking a second look at those dogmas, like the little kid looking at the emperor with no clothes, to really see, are the things the elite's telling us actually true, because they don't seem to be managing our society with any kind of eye towards sustainability whatsoever. So it's just interesting to feel the tide kind of turning here, and to just transcend the post-World War II order, which we grew up in for our entire lives, and just seeing it all wash away.
Well, I think it's probably important to tangle with some of the harder notions, the things that Nick Fuentes talks about. So, there is a thing, Piers Morgan calls him racist, and he does say that black people should be imprisoned. And, I guess he's talking about, he's from some white suburb in Illinois or something.
Chicago.
And then there's the actual situation in Chicago, which I guess there's tons of gang violence and people getting shot and whatnot. And so, Nick Fuentes probably shouldn't say, he definitely shouldn't say that black people should be imprisoned. He should talk about the actual situation and what it is. It seems like, so to some extent, I guess the pearl clutching from Piers Morgan, I can sympathize with. I guess it's a way of being provocative and gaining a viewership, but it's probably not constructive, I guess. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a fair thing to be said there. And I guess the other thing, I don't know, he says that he doesn't think women should be allowed to vote. And I guess, I don't know, there is, what you were saying before about Edward Bernays using, cigarettes as a way to, foment, women's suffrage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, there is kind of a feminization of our society going on, right? Is that a controversial thing to say? SNL appeals to moms, or a lot of television does, because these are the people watching TV, and it doesn't really appeal to men in a lot of ways. Toxic masculinity is this phrase that's come out, and it basically means, which masculinity is not toxic. It's kind of a description for an umbrella that covers a lot of masculine behavior. So you could say there's something wrong there, but ultimately, I don't know. Yeah, I guess I don't think women should not be allowed to vote, though.
Yeah, I feel like men are we can fall for the same scams. We if it just happened to be that women were a right target for the freedom torches, but I feel like men are every bit as capable of falling for a wretched scam as any young lady would be.
I think one thing is, what we need to do is be in the aforementioned post-class society, or at least one where we're susceptible to a fugazi. Although I'm not really sure, maybe the nature of class is that this is a problem that can't really be beat, because you're just always going to have elites and mouth breathers, right?
Yes, there's a spectrum of people in terms of their effectiveness, right? There's people that are really good at carrying out their will, and people who are not so good at it. But I think that the flip we need, it's you really, it's a binary choice. You can either, let's just say broadly, you can either say that the purpose of the economy is to support social sustainability, and so that when there's too much debt, for example, what you'd want to do is you want to change the social relationship. You change the debt relationships to preserve the social relationships. But what we do instead is we destroy the social relationships to preserve the debt relationships. And that is a choice that the ruling class would like us to make. But I think that any rational society would make the other choice. We're going to modify the economic relationships to preserve the social relationships instead of discarding the social relationships to preserve the economic relationships. And so, like, when it comes to like the feminization of society, I think that actually is happening, and I think that there's a class-based incentive for that. When the wealthy get too good at extracting wealth from the rest of society, and wealth inequality explodes, right? It's the poor young men who are the threat to the establishment, right? They're the ones who storm the Bastille, and so I do think that the feminization of society is another one of these psyops, and the idea is to undermine the angry mob, the angry young men, to undermine that as much as possible. So I do think that once again the class-based lens is very revealing on this front.
Yeah. So I guess ultimately my stance would be that I think it's easy to do some pearl clutching around talking about like women's suffrage, I guess, or if you do any questioning of it, and I guess it's understandable. But I mean, I think it's important to, like, if we're going to kind of get to this post-class society or get past the fugazi, I think it's something we have to like go through, like adolescence or something. It's something we kind of have to figure out. And so, yeah, ultimately, what's my opinion? Well, I think that Nick Fuentes should be listened to and not banned.
Well, yes, yeah.
And I think that tangling with his ideas is good for ultimately like our general philosophical growth. But I would not necessarily agree with all of them. The bit about the secular religion I think is like important, and the rest of it I think is less important.
Yep, I think that your analogy to adolescence is really the best one here. In order to get to a better society, we are going to have to start talking about forbidden ideas. Start considering them as the fleet breaks up, as the old world washes away, the post-World War II order washes away. It's important to not have topics held off the table of rational discussion. And even though I might find both Messieurs Yiannopoulos and Fuentes to be, abrasive or offensive according to my post-World War II sensibilities, I do think that it's important. First of all, there's something delicious about considering heresies or hearing heretical ideas, and that was the real thrill of listening to these podcasts. But I do think that tackling these issues, it's not enough to pearl clutch. You're going to have to actually explain to Fuentes why it's important that women have the vote, and not just men, for example. Right? We're going to have to actually hash out and prosecute these arguments and ideas, because we're sailing into the part of the map where there's no map, right? The part of the map where here be monsters, right? We are headed into the unknown, and we can't have certain topics just be taboo by virtue because it benefits the upper class. Like, we are going to have a serious renegotiation of society and the secular religion you mentioned, Brian. And so that's why I thought these podcasts were electrifying and very interesting.
They sure, I thought about them like all week.
All right, well, what do you think? Have we spouted enough offensive commentary for today, Brian?
Sure.
All right. Well, I will invite our listeners to pay us a little visit over at systemfailure.org. There, you can enter your email address and sign up to receive the weekly essays written by yours truly every single Sunday in your email inbox. And if you'd like to get in touch with either Brian or myself and let us know how we let you down on today's pod by repeating offensive opinions, you can accomplish that tidy feat on the About page at systemfailure.org simply by clicking on the appropriate name. Well, I will be back on Thursday for that weekly essay read, folks, and then on Monday, Brian and I will be back with another fresh episode for your listening pleasure. Can't wait to see you all then. Hope you have a fantastic week.
See ya.